All right, we're back here on the Chase Notes podcast, taping this on a Wednesday afternoon. Ben Shulman is here of Locked On Jays. Ben, good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm doing well. The Blue Jays are playing well, and they just got their first back-to-back road, road shutout since 2015. So it's pretty good week to be covering the Blue Jays for sure.
Yeah, the Blue Jays are back. The Braves are back. It's all good vibes for teams that where their name starts with a B is what we've learned here.
The Brewers are middling a little bit,
That's
but
true.
they're still leading the division, so
Well,
can't get mad at that.
I mean, hey, I respect the Brewers' commitment to just not having anyone with a good WRC plus atop their lineup at any point, and still finding ways to score 8 runs and win the NL Central. It's a tradition unlike any other. We're going to be the complete antithesis of the Philadelphia Phillies, and we're going to show you. So that's Brewers baseball. Get excited. But we're not talking about the Brewers on this podcast. We're going to talk about the Blue Jays, the team that you said is soaring. They've got, I think, a 97% chance of making the playoffs per Fangraphs. They're right up there with the Yankees. The Jays, we should also mention, have a 70% chance of making the playoffs if it started today. But the Blue Jays, their season has gone really well. Obviously, last year did not end the way that Jays fans had hoped, but behind the scenes, a lot of folks were like, okay, yeah, we're glad that the Blue Jays did not make the playoffs because they would have caused a lot of problems if that had been the case. So it was like one of those things where it was a lot of teams were not sad that did not happen, but they are looking like a playoff team. But through what are we at, 60 games, 50 something games,
55 for the Jays right now.
Yeah, through 55 games. Has this season been kind of the way you anticipated for Toronto?
I would say probably not. It's been a really, I mean, wins and losses wise, yeah, you can't be mad at. I think they're on a 97 win pace and 11 up on 500. But they were very, very average to below average to start the year, and that was kind of the shocker. They weren't hitting at all. If you go look just at their scores from the first month and a half of the season, they really were a middling offensive team that was pitching really well, which is the opposite of what the Blue Jays kind of image is to a lot of people. It's a team that scores a lot but probably needs more pitching. Recently, and kind of starting with their dismantling of the Angels, who have fallen apart since they swept them in the 4-game set, they've started to hit like the Blue Jays, and that's what makes me really excited is now, I know it's the Kansas City Royals, but it's a Major League Baseball team that you have scored, I think, 17 runs on and not allowed a run against in 2 games. And that's the potential of the Blue Jays and what we expected to see with, the bolstered rotation and the bolstered bullpen. And then obviously this offense is going to score.
Yeah, it's interesting because the 2 corner outfield spots are still not hitting. You've got Chapman, who is still very much not hitting. And then you found out that maybe Kevin Biggio is just a utility guy and not an everyday starter. Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah, I would say so, but part of the reason we found that out is because Santiago Espinal is not a utility player and definitely a starter. So Cavan got hurt. I will say in Teoscar's defense, he got hurt as well. And other people had to step up. And yeah, Biggio I think he's a good utility player because he plays first, third, second, left, and right. So you can really use him. They need a left-handed bat. But yeah, he's probably more of a get in where he fits in type of guy. And then the corner outfielders did not start the year well. They're both OPS is still in the 600s, but I don't have their May numbers in front of me, but they were a lot better than their April numbers at least. So it's trending in the right direction.
There you go. Who has been the biggest surprise this year for Toronto?
Alejandro Kirk. Alejandro Kirk is...
He's like a cult hero now in Toronto.
Yeah, so, I mean, most people don't know he's 23. He's younger than Adley Rutschman. He's younger than a lot of people who are prospects coming up right now. He's hitting .320 with an .878 OPS. He's the highest WAR catcher in the American League. Unless he completely tails off, I expect him to be an American League All-Star this year. And you wouldn't have expected that by the numbers, your best production hitter for the Blue Jays, 50 games in, like we're a third of the way into the year. It's not a 10-game sample size. Is Alejandro Kirk. Is he the best hitter on this team? No, it's probably George Springer or Vladamir Guerrero Jr. or Bo Bichette. But Alejandro Kirk has hit as well as anyone has. So to me, he's been the biggest surprise.
Was this coming though when y'all were going into the year? Like, was this something that he had in him that he could be this kind of masher this year? Like, was this like what was the scouting report on Kirk before we saw all of this?
It was not fully this. I would say close to it. He's always been a really good contact guy. He's not tall. He's shorter than I am, which is saying something. So he doesn't have a huge strike zone, which allows his high contact skills to flourish. But he's hitting for more power. He's walking more than he struck out to start this year. I don't think a lot of people saw that coming. And the big thing for him that didn't enable him to be an everyday player and hit to this potential before is that he was a minus defender. And now he's arguably been a plus defender for the Blue Jays as a catcher. And if that's the case, then the sky's the limit. And the crazy thing is Danny Jansen, their other main catcher who's been in and out of the lineup, every time he's in the lineup, he's clubbing homers. And their top prospect, who probably should be called up by now, but they have nowhere to put him, is Gabriel Moreno, another catcher. So I think a lot of people, I don't know. That's a good question. I think you trade someone because you're not going to keep Moreno down because he's cost controlled for 6 more years, and you want to use that while you have it. So I think, Danny Jansen, who is a beloved player for the Blue Jays and a personal catcher to Hyun-Jin Ryu, could find himself on the trade block at some point because...
Well, it doesn't help that Ryu is not having a great year.
No, it doesn't. Yeah. It definitely doesn't help. But they need to move on from a catcher, and if Kirk is hitting 320 with an 880 OPS, you can't trade him. He's younger than Jansen. He's got more cost-controlled years ahead of him. And Moreno, at a certain point, has to get up to the majors. Maybe you try and teach him another position. I don't know. But for now, I do think they could be looking to move on from someone. That's with literally zero insider information. But they're not going to have 3 catchers. There's just not enough roster spots to make that justifiable.
So what kind of capital could he bring in, though, Moreno? Like, does he bring in another veteran arm that you guys could use? Because, I don't know. There's not... You look around the league, it's like, do you want to take a flyer on Strasburg if he's somewhat healthy this summer? Patrick Corbin for 2 more years. Do you want to bring that guy in? I don't know. Like, what do you do if you're the Jays? Because, I mean, Barrios, as we haven't talked about yet, he hasn't been good this year. Like, it's very strange. Like, Ross Stripling, great. And then you have, like, Barrios and Ryu, not great. I don't know. What should be the thinking if you're Toronto? Like, if you're moving one of these 3, like, I feel like Jansen would not bring in nearly the haul that Moreno would bring in, right?
Yeah, I don't think he would, but I do think they value Moreno much higher in terms of not wanting to give him up.
Yeah.
I think they're looking for bullpen arms. I think everyone's always looking for bullpen arms. Their bullpen has been solid, but what contending team doesn't want to stash another guy that can pitch in the 7th or 8th? And I think they're looking for a left-handed bat. I think it could go one of 2 ways. I think they could be looking for, maybe an Andrew Benintendi, some sort of contact bat, or an Ian Happ maybe. Or they could be looking for a pure power left-handed bat. Like, I wonder if, they don't really have a fixated DH. That's why Biggio can play so much, because they rotate everyone in and out of the DH spot, which I like. But if they want a DH, Josh Bell is out there if they're looking for someone. And I'm sure there's other guys I'm forgetting that can bat from the left side and hit
Bell
for
would be
power.
great for them.
Yeah, and even, another guy that kind of mixes it. They had Corey Dickerson last year. He's a solid player. Like, is he,
Can I interest you in an Alex Dickerson?
Yeah, you never know. So I think they're looking for lefty bats and relievers most likely. I think they are, I know we're going to get into it in a bit. I think they are betting on Barrios to bounce back. So I don't think they're incredibly worried about the rotation. And Ryu, if you look pre-injury, he was a lot worse than post-injury, but then he just got injured again. So I'm most worried about his health. But I think with Manoah, Kikuchi, Gausman, Stripling, and then the variable of Barrios, they probably feel fine enough about the starters to stand pat there.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what they end up doing there. What about Vlad Jr.? It seems like he has not drawn a lot of the same kind of buzz this year, and he's still good. You look at the numbers and everything else, he's still good. Is it just like he's not otherworldly this year, so people have kind of looked the other way and are looking at guys like Kirk who just pop more and are bigger surprises? But has Vlad been basically what you expected this year?
He's been a little underwhelming. I think he would tell you that. That after nearly grabbing a triple crown last year and had an MVP season, but at the wrong time when Shohei Ohtani had probably the greatest season ever. He's come back, and I'm looking at his numbers right now. He's hitting well. He is an 820 OPS. That's good. Like he's a 135 OPS plus guy. His 13 home runs are well above average, and his 30 RBIs are good. But he's just not the consistent hitter that we saw last year. I mean, he hit 320 for most of last year and ended around 310. He's hitting 249 right now, and it's been a mix of things. They're not throwing him strikes. Like pitchers are just not throwing him anything to hit. And like you said earlier with the corner outfielders, it's easier to not throw him strikes when Teoscar Hernandez isn't hitting, because then you feel better about walking Vladdy. Last year, Teoscar Hernandez, and the year before, was the Silver Slugger. You're not going to walk guys for a Silver Slugger to come up, because that's a tough guy to go up against. So Vladdy, it's getting better. And excuse me. And and I think that it's you can see in the last 13 games he's hit 6 homers. So like he's really starting to heat up. I'm not too worried, but no, it's been disappointing. If you were to say has he hit as well as last year, I would say no. But will he hit close to as well as last year by the end of the year? I would bet on it, because with the whole lineup kind of heating up over the last couple of weeks, you have to throw more strikes. And when he gets pitches to hit, he crushes them. He's just not getting a lot to hit right now, and he's chasing a little bit because of it.
Has Springer been mostly healthy this whole year? Do you think he's fine? Yeah. And because that was a big thing that people missed last year with the Jays, was just how much time he missed. So you think he's fine, and he's someone you should count on the rest of the way?
Absolutely. He has been fantastic. He's probably been their best player. He is second on the team in OPS, only to Kirk. He's played a better he does get shifted over to right sometimes late in games, because he's 32 years old, but He's been a better center fielder than I think most would think. He's made a handful of diving catches this year. He brings a ton of power from the leadoff spot, but he still gets on base at a good clip. He's been huge. I think a lot of people were wondering why, the Blue Jays lost the Cy Young Award winner and a top 3 MVP candidate with Ray and Simeon going out the door. Why would they be better this year than last year? And it was almost like making a trade for Springer, in the fact that he just barely played last year. And now he's played 51 games. I believe that's more than he played all of last season.
Yeah.
And we're at the 55 game mark. Or he played 78 last year. So he's already approaching what he played last year. He's playing more center field this year than he did last year. And he's a big leader. This team is really, really young. He's the only 30-year-old that they play. So they kind of need him sometimes to just be an emotional leader, and he's definitely been that so far.
That's interesting. Gausman, why do you think he's been so good in Toronto this year? What is he doing?
He's just throwing his splitter until anyone decides that they can hit it. And he did get hit a little bit in his last start. So some have wondered, is it too much of the same pitch and maybe mixing it up? I wouldn't touch what he's doing personally. His splitter is arguably the best pitch in baseball. If you're just isolating a single pitch, it's absolutely unhittable. Guys know what he's doing. He throws the splitter low and the fastball high, and that's almost all he does. He throws the slider a little bit, but he's pretty much working off 2 pitches, and it's so unhittable that there's really not much you can do. And if you, by any means, come in contact with it, you probably just roll over or tap it off the end of the bat on the ground to one of the infielders. So it's near impossible to hit that pitch. He just has to make sure that guys aren't sitting on it too much or sitting on his fastball. But the whiff rate numbers and the opponent's batting average numbers against the splitter specifically are ridiculous.
So do you think it's something that continues the rest of the way? You think Gausman is kind of in a scenario like postseason, how do you look at your top 3? Who do you think it will be come October, November? Who do you think the Jays will be counting on?
I think it'll be Gausman, Manoah, Barrios. Now, Barrios has to pick it up. But he's never finished with an ERA above 4 in his career. And he just came off a 13 strikeout game where he allowed 2 runs in 7 innings. So, I think Barrios can rein it in. Manoah and Gausman are essentially locks. And Kikuchi's pitched well, but I think the eye test would tell you that Barrios is probably the better option. So unless they do bring someone in, I would say if they cut it down to 3, it's Manoah, Gausman, Barrios. If they have a fourth starter, that gets interesting on who they would start in game 4. Right now, it's probably Kikuchi.
Why has Matt Chapman been painfully average?
Bad luck a little bit.
Mm.
He's been incredible at third base, which is, obviously people know that, and it gets boring to talk about for some people. But he is a ridiculous defender. Yeah, painfully average by any stretch of the imagination, though. 99 OPS plus right now.
Hmm.
His hard hit numbers are really good. That's why it's kind of hard for me to figure it out. His hard hit numbers are really good. His expected numbers are really good. He has been hitting better lately. But it felt like maybe he was pressing a little bit early on, like just trying to, swing very hard and get the ball out of the park a lot. And to his credit, he does have 7 home runs, which is decent. But the average is starting to come up. He sat in the 180s for a little bit. It's up to 220. So I think it's a little bit of bad luck. He's still not that far removed from the hip issues, and he's never gone on the injured list or anything like that. I think he's sat in 1 game this year, but there's been times where it seems like he's still testing it out a little bit. So maybe still just coming back from that injury, but it's looking better. Like kind of the whole story of this Jays year is like everyone disappointed in April and now they're all getting better. So if they can do in June what they did in May, then Matt Chapman, I'm not expecting him to be an 850 OPS guy. If he can hit 240 and have an OPS in the 750s and hit over 20 home runs, pair that with Gold Glove level defense at third, I think that's what the Blue Jays want. They want him to be an average to above average hitter with elite level defense.
Do you think they make a big swing this summer? Is it just bullpen help they do to bolster this lineup, or do you think they do something else?
It's tough. It's just I think they have a lot of faith in the corner outfield spots, which would be kind of the only place you would make the big swing.
Well, if you moved on from one, would it be Gurriel or Teoscar?
It would be Gurriel.
Okay.
And that's no slight to Gurriel, who has, again, also hit a little bit better recently than he did to start the year for sure. But Teoscar was an all-star last year, nearly led the league in home runs in the shortened season and Silver Slugger back-to-back years. I don't think they're too worried about him. Gurriel's name at least popped up in trade rumors in the offseason a little bit. Yeah, I think if they would make a big swing, they would have to trade him and prospects for a better outfielder in their eyes. I think it's unlikely, though. I think a lot of these guys came up together. I think they like the chemistry of the team. I think the biggest swing would be back-end reliever. Maybe I'm trying to think right now and struggling to think of who's a really good closer or really good reliever on a struggling team, and the Cubs and David Robertson. Maybe I think that's the biggest swing. I know that's not headline news, but that might be the biggest swing that I could see them making, is for a guy who some are trying to get to close for them. But yeah, other than that, Benintendi, I really think they're looking for platoon outfield at best, and high leverage relief would be probably their most noteworthy trade acquisition.
We'll end on this. What over the next couple of weeks are you monitoring the most closely when it comes to the Jays?
I think it's Jose Barrios. He's still, they signed him to a 7-year deal that gives him over $20 million a year, and we are half a season into it. So for everyone freaking out about it, there's a lot of time. But he's kind of alternated between Jose Barrios level start and then getting absolutely blown up. So he's the guy I monitor a lot. Early in the season, it was, Jordan Romano wasn't getting very much rest. What's the deal with that? But they've gotten him a lot of rest now. So the offense, I'm not too worried about. I guess Vladdy too. Just, can the contact get up a little bit? Everything. He's walking a lot. He wasn't hitting for power early. He's hitting for power now. Can he just get the contact back up? So Vladdy and Barrios, but at the same time, they've won a lot of games with those guys not playing to their best ability. So that, in a way, is kind of an exciting thing going forward. If either of them start to click, the AL East is gauntlet, but everyone else probably is in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I think it's for sure. It's just the Red Sox. I guess we just have to wait and see what happens there this summer, because they're the Red Sox, and I could see them bouncing out of this flu. They're a game over 500 now, somewhere around there.
I think they're 2 up on 500 now.
Yeah. So they're still, I would not completely count them out because they had pretty good preseason playoff odds. And
they're in a wild card spot right now.
Right.
There
That's
are
what I'm
four
saying.
AL East teams in a playoff spot right now.
So they're in good company. I think the Jays are fine, which is kind of wild that you would have four teams, because you would think that they would beat up on each other enough where that's not a possibility. But man, that's wild. Well, Ben, how can the good folks keep up with your work all across the board this week?
Well, thank you. Yeah, you guys can check out Locked On Jays on Twitter @Locked On Jays, or we podcast on pretty much all the regular platforms: Apple, Spotify, Odyssey, Stitcher, some other stuff, YouTube as well. And if you're a fan of minor league baseball, I broadcast for the Fort Wayne Tin Caps. So if you want to check that out, high A affiliate of the Padres. Links are in my Twitter @Ben Shulman 7. But thank you so much, Chase. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. This was fun. It's a good logo, the Tin Caps. I like the logo. It's a good logo.
Appreciate
it's pretty
it.
good. Yeah, absolutely. Ben, thank you so much, and we'll have to check back in again soon.
Yes, sir.